Baldur's Gate, or simply the Gate, is the largest metropolis and city-state on the Sword Coast within the Greater Western Heartlands. It's a crowded city of commerce and opportunity, perhaps the most prosperous and influential merchant city on the western coast of Faerun. Despite its long-standing presence as a neutral power, the leaders of Baldur's Gate are members of the Lords' Alliance, which is a council of lords and partnership of mercantile cities founded in 1325 Dale Reckoning. Its members are from the Sword Coast, the northern and western heartlands, including Waterdeep, Silvery Moon, and Neverwinter, as well as other free cities and towns in the region which made up the bulk of the organization. It was formed to oppose the growing influence of the Black Network, as well as the Shadow Thieves of Am. Baldur's Gate is patrolled by a strong peacekeeping force known only as the Watch, along with the presence of the Flaming Fist Mercenary Company, one of the most powerful and expensive fighting forces in all the realms during the 14th century Dale Reckoning, motivated primarily by the promise of riches and glory, though they edge on the side of promoting peace and order throughout the realm. While the Flaming Fist's base of operation is in the city of Baldur's Gate, they have other forts and establishments in Antirome, Chult, and Tethir, the latter of which proved to be a source for recent hires by Duke Elton during their decade-long civil war. They also work outside of the city and their forts, their sphere of influence extending just south of Baragost, but stopping before Nashkel. Together, the combined forces of the Watch and the Flaming Fist keep the city generally peaceful and safe. This inherent sense of security allows Baldur's Gate to keep a tolerant and welcome attitude towards outsiders, whether they are wealthy merchants, poor refugees, or, as it has historically attracted, less scrupulous individuals such as pirates and smugglers. Baldur's Gate is located to the south of the great city-state of Waterdeep, north of Am, along the well-traveled Coastway Road that passes over the Worm's Crossing, through the outer city and into the gate proper. It is nestled on a stretch of poor soil within a natural bay that formed on the north bank of the river Chianthar, about 40 miles east from its mouth on the Sea of Swords. As the bards of the 14th century describe it, the city is a crescent moon that wraps around the great harbor, although in the century that followed, Baldur's Gate grew well beyond that form. While the terrain of the upper city is flat and level, the lower city is built over steep bluffs that overlook the Grey Harbor. The Baldarian people take great pride in the inclusiveness of their city. It is a place that anyone can call home or start a new life within, regardless of their race, creed, or personal history. Despite its dense population and crowded streets, Baldur's Gate is remarkably clean and safe for citizens and visitors alike. Unlike other cosmopolitan cities, Baldur's Gate is home to few formal festivals and gatherings. In addition to celebrating High Harvesttide in autumn, which is a feast to celebrate the harvest and abundance of food, but it is also a time when those wishing to travel leave on their journey before winter's onset. Baldarians celebrate the Breaking every spring, marking the day when the last hunks of ice break away from the Grey Harbor, freeing it for safe trade. They also hold public celebrations for Returning Day, which commemorates Balduran's return to his home city following his famous expedition across the trackless sea. Every so often, Baldarians gather together on the streets around groupings of crates, barrels, and other impromptu seating to share stories and tales with one another. These cobble parties, so named for the cobblestone roads on which they are hosted, are marked by special rose-red torches that can be purchased from any local fireworks shop. Like most great cities, Baldur's Gate has many places of worship scattered across its districts. For instance, Twin Songs, a district of the outer city, is located on the northern side of the Worm's Crossing Bridge, houses an expansive collection of minor temples, shrines, and altars dedicated to nearly every god. In fact, it holds monuments dedicated to more deities than most Baldarians are even aware existed within the city. Baldur's Gate hosts a great diversity of temples and shrines dedicated to nearly every deity. Even shrines devoted to the worship of evil powers, such as Bane and Baal, are tolerated by the city's Flaming Fist soldiers. Despite the city's inclusiveness, Three deities predominate the worship of Baldurian citizens. For favor and safety at sea, the veneration of Umberlee has been a mainstay throughout their history. The favor of Tymora is often sought for greater wealth and prosperity with regard to trade, gambling, and mercantile endeavors. Lastly, as continual expression for gratitude for the technological blessings bestowed upon the city, the worship of Gond is widespread, even beyond his temple and museum. In addition to the myriad of religious groups that flock to the city's temples, a small number of cults and esoteric societies also keep their home within Baldur's Gate. Since its famous tax revolt, Baldur's Gate is ruled by 4 Grand Dukes, whose membership compose the Council of 4. They are elected by the citizens to serve for life or until they wish to retire. The Council serves as a member of the Lord's Alliance, which includes Waterdeep and Silverymoon, among other nation-states. After an attempted coup by former Grand Duke Valarkin, whom during the 15th century Dale Reckoning led an attack against his fellow Grand Dukes in an attempt to gain sole rulership over the city, he and his band of lycanthropes, known as the Band of the Red Moon, were stopped by the combined efforts of the Flaming Fist and the Baldurian Watch. Valarkin and his remaining band were driven from the city into the nearby Werewoods. After this coup, Baldur's Gate's government underwent a major restructure, and the newly created Baldurian Parliament elected the dukes. For a time, the city was ruled by Grand Duke Portier, at the behest of Parliament. This changed again, however, sometime before 1479 Dale Reckoning. As the Council of 4 was reinstated, they were still aided by the Parliament of Peers, an advisory council responsible for submitting official recommendations regarding a myriad of civil issues, who continued to serve as their electors as well as the legislative body. These 50 or so influential Baldurians met to discuss city matters and made recommendations to the council. The Council of 4 are served by 5 deputies. These city officials oversee their subordinate bureaucrats and maintain the daily needs of the city. Their titles and responsibilities are as follows: Harbor Master, who manages operations of the Great Harbor, assigning tariffs and taxes on imported goods and maintains the records of all goods shipped in or out of Baldur's Gate. High Constable and Master of Walls, who is a castellan of the Watch Citadel and responsible for overseeing the City Watch. The Master of Drains and Underways, maintains operations of the city's drains, sewers, waterways, and aqueducts. The Master of Cobbles, whom oversees construction and maintenance of the city roads, bridges, and non-water related stone infrastructure. And finally, the Purse Master, collecting taxes, investing city funds, directed payment for city officials, and oversees the Bailiff of the Wide, who organizes, schedules, and records the information about every merchant and vendor who sets up shop within the upper city's open marketplace. Historically, the Baldurian people have a complicated relationship with taxation at the hands of city officials. Excessive gate tolls incited a transformative revolution in the city in its formative years, leading to the formation of a preeminent form of governance. Ironically, that same governing body enacted nearly identical taxers that remained for hundreds of years. By the 15th century, city officials collected tolls from passerbys at nearly every city gate, through a vast, far-reaching bureaucracy that was constantly under threat of corruption. The government of Baldur's Gate maintains a strict and complex legal code that consists of a series of regulations, official decrees, and treatises that were nigh incomprehensible for anyone but the city's barristers. By and large, laws favored these individuals along with foreign diplomats, the Flaming Fist, and members of the Watch. Citizens of the city proper and those living in the outer city were afforded far fewer considerations. That being said, anyone who obeyed the laws could walk freely through the city's streets. Anyone caught in the act of breaking the law are immediately apprehended and punished, either by the Watch or the Flaming Fist. Typically, the punishments fit the crime. Lesser crimes, such as violence or thievery, warranted a public whipping or the removal of a finger. Those who broke agreed upon contracts were sentenced to forced labor, while disturbing the peace or public lasciviousness led to public shaming by a knight in the stocks. The city of Baldur's Gate issued hostelry license to proprietors of inns and taverns within the city walls. Lodging businesses could not legally operate without said license. Throughout its history, various thieves' guilds have risen and fallen in Baldur's Gate, including the one led by Altos Thilbild, Xantum's Guild, and the Hands of Glory. Since the fall of these groups in the late 14th century, the guild, led by Estella Keen, better known as Nine Fingers, emerged as the predominant thieves' organization in Baldur's Gate. Nearly all of the smaller gangs of the outer and lower regions owe at least some obedience to this influential organization. The guild is highly organized and holds sway over nearly every aspect of Baldur's Gate, its people, and even the Baldurian government. While it is led by a solitary guildmaster, it lacks a centralized location. Rather, the guildmaster communicates to subordinates by means of their private bodyguards, or, if absolutely necessary, spoke directly to the guild's kingpins. Each kingpin serves as the leader of one of the city's gangs with a territory that encompasses one of the city's districts. They each operate differently depending on their neighborhood and the resources available therein. Some of these gangs include the Bloody Hands of Stony Eyes, Ganthal's Galleons of Whitkeep, and the Rivington Rats. These kingpins owe their success to the guildmaster and in turn manage criminal enterprises that fall under their domain. Under the kingpins are the various agents of the guild, operators, enforcers, and footpads. The operators are masters of manipulation, using guile and skill to acquire certain prized goods, or to bring on board any individual that were otherwise unswayed by lesser guild members. Enforcers act as the group's muscle, working as guards, racketeers, collection agents, and protection salesmen for the guild's clients. The footpad of the guild handles lesser crimes of profit, such as theft, con jobs, and illegal gambling rings. Those who are not actual members of the guild but still provide a service of sorts are referred to as assets. Many members of the Flaming Fist, the Watch, and even the Parliament of Peers find themselves part of the organization from which they receive some sort of recompense or kickback. Clients are different from assets in that they are financially or otherwise indebted to the guild and are controlled through blackmail, threats, or methods even more malevolent. Throughout its history, Baldur's Gate has little stake in the affairs of others. For the most part, the city is respected as a neutral power that never involves itself with the politics or conflicts that arise between the other states of the Sword Coast and Western Heartlands. Perhaps more importantly, Baldur's Gate, while undoubtedly a rich prize, is so well defended by its massive walls and well-trained Flaming Fist soldiers that few have ever seriously considered invading or trying to occupy the city. Historically, Baldur's Gate has had a long enmity with its southern neighbor Amn, which nearly resulted in a war during the Iron Crisis of the 1360s. Over the next century, however, the only major threats to Baldur's Gate were the pirates operating out of the ruins of Luskan, or the merchants of Waterdeep who resent the city's continual growing wealth and power. The Grey Harbor of Baldur's Gate is one of the largest, busiest, and most popular ports of call found in the western coast of Faerun, handling a wide variety of cargoes that rival even the sprawling ports of Kalimshan. Due to the fact trade is not tied to any individual's moral alignment, anyone conducting business in a non-harmful manner is welcome to trade in the city. By virtue of this tolerant outlook, Baldur's Gate has become the greatest center of trade along the entire Sword Coast in the 15th century, outcompeting both Waterdeep and Amn. For years, Baldur's Gate minted its own silver trade bars, the most common variety of which was a 1-pound bar worth 5 gold. More importantly, the city also set the value of this form of currency and regulated its use in trade. Baldur's Gate sponsors nearly 90 professional guilds, from seafarers to financiers, from the upper city to lore masters, brewmasters, metalworkers, and nearly every skilled trade person in between. While the honest and once powerful mercantile guild known as the Merchants League previously dominated trade in the city, it was banned by the Council of Four and forced to operate in secret. Similarly, the secretive collective of noble merchants known as the Knights of the Shield operated in an unofficial capacity. While the Iron Throne's influence grew and diminished throughout the 14th and 15th centuries, they continued to control trade of weapons and armor that were used by the Watch and the Flaming Fist. The Cloth Market is a trades event that is held annually in late summer or early fall. The market attracts the best textile weavers, seamsters, and gown makers from all over the continent. As of the mid-1300s Dale reckoning, stone was usually imported from Mirabar via Luskan for use of construction. Having been magically transported from up north, this feat of arcane conveyance was quite expensive. Historically speaking, Baldur's Gate is naturally well defended by its location in a natural inlet and the Great Wall that was financed by the city's founder, Baldur. However, its security is often attributed to its political neutrality and the worldview of its leadership. While the city remains dedicated to the termination of threats which jeopardize trade and commerce in the Sword Coast, it refuses to involve itself with the region's political conflicts. Defense of the upper city falls under the responsibility of the Watch, the constables who enforce the laws of the city's noble class. As it has been for over a century before the Second Sundering, the rest of the city is policed by members of the Flaming Fist. Many officers within the Fist are retired adventurers, and its highest rank of Marshal is by tradition one of the Grand Dukes of Baldur's Gate. While the Flaming Fist always keeps a strong contingent within the city's walls, they double as the city's standing army and are free to hire themselves out in external conflicts as long as those conflicts never align against Baldur's Gate. At the behest of their leaders, they may even embark upon journeys to the then newly discovered continent of Mastica. After a century of serving as defenders of the city, they have become so entwined with the fate of its well-being they operate as the de facto police force for domestic concerns and as the city's bulwark for threats from abroad. In addition to the 1,700 plus soldiers of the Flaming Fist, the Grand Dukes command a navy of half a dozen ships with crews of at least 40 men each. While cats are abundantly found throughout Baldur's Gate, as they are used to eliminate vermin from cargo ships, dogs are not a common sight within the city. Livestock such as horses, cows, goats, and the like are prohibited from the city proper, relegated to the paddocks and pens of the outer city. The city's laws forbid animals larger than a peacock to gain entrance into the city. There are some who consider this regulation to be outdated and archaic. The population of Baldur's Gate has always been dominated by humans, though other races such as elves, dwarves, and to some lesser extent some drow, settle within the city and are not looked upon differently. The older districts of the upper city and lower city are quite diverse, while newer neighborhoods and those of the outer city saw some homogenization among ethnic and racial lines. While no race is outright banned, more monstrous humanoids such as trolls, ogres, and orcs are a rare sight indeed. Adventurers are a welcome presence in Baldur's Gate, many of whom arrive from the far corners of Toril to seek opportunities for fame, fortune, or whatever alluring endeavor presents itself. Even those from unlikely walks of life find themselves enticed by the stories that fill the city's taverns and inns, giving in to the temptation of thrill and excitement. Many lower and working class individuals live in the streets of the lower and outer city regions, while low-skilled laborers and dock workers ensure goods arrive to their destinations in the Gray Harbor. Tradesfolk such as tanners, smiths, garment makers, and the like produce their goods throughout the city. The industry of these laborious individuals drive the ever-growing economy of the greatest mercantile power of the Sword Coast. The merchants of Baldur's Gate are famous across the realms for their heroic work ethic, keen sense of business, and outright gumption. The wealthy families are the nobility of the upper city. While their lives are viewed as the epitome of luxury and opulence, many are civic-minded benefactors that genuinely strive to improve their home city. This Baldarian elite class is limited to a few select human families, along with the dwarven shatter shields. No matter how rich any businessman or merchant becomes, you cannot buy your way into the Baldarian Patriarch. Originally, the harbor settlement that came to be known as Baldur's Gate was a well-hidden meeting place for pirates, scavengers, and ghostlighters. These ne'er-do-wells used lights to trick ships sailing through the foggy coast, running them aground before pilfering their goods. After looting what they could, they sailed up the river Chianthar to the small bay to their secluded haven called the Gray Harbor. Legends say that the seafaring hero Balduran returned home to the Gray Harbor from a voyage to a far-off continent of Ancherome, far beyond the elven isle of Evermeet. He had accumulated great wealth on this journey. After hiding some of his riches away in hidden caches, he ordered a great granite wall to be built for the protection of his home. Soon after, Balduran set sail on a second voyage to the continent and subsequently vanished, never to return. After Balduran vanished, local farmers took control of the wall's construction and used it to protect their own holds and farmsteads rather than the harbor. Nearby townsfolk and other outsiders flocked to the fledgling town for protection, and the hamlet swelled in size. The walled region of Gray Harbor came to be known as Old Town, while the newly constructed buildings between the southern wall and the harbor were built in the portion thereafter known as Heapside. The division of the town by its great wall had created a schism between the landowners of Old Town and Balduran's former associates, the captains and other seafarers of the Gray Harbor. The Old Towners taxed the carts coming north from the harbor through Baldur's Gate, which led to the ire of the sailors and their eventual refusal to pay. As their anger turned to action, the smugglers, pirates, and merchants of Heapside breached Baldur's Gate and stormed Old Town by force. Just before they laid siege to the Keep of High Hall, the foremost senior sea captains argued for the farmer lord's surrender. After a quick vote, a truce was struck between the two parties, and the retired captains were installed as leaders, jokingly known as dukes, of the rapidly growing city that was earnestly renamed Baldur's Gate. Following the founding of the nation of Am, trade skyrocketed in Baldur's Gate and the city expanded. This propensity secured a renewed connection between Old Town, which came to be known as the Upper City, and Heapside, now called the Lower City. The fate of all Baldarian citizens were entwined as one, a significance that was reflected in the expanded construction of the city wall. The bluffs of the Lower City were protected by two extensions of the old wall that continued south to the northern shores of the river Chianthar. The city became the most powerful force in the Western Heartlands, and despite its neutrality, joined the Lord's Alliance. The city was only recorded to have been called upon by the Alliance once, in the year of the Black Horde, 1235 Dale Reckoning, when the eponymous legion of orcs attempted to invade. They sent their top military general, Eldrith, to drive them off. While she achieved victory at first, she eventually betrayed Baldur's Gate and was killed in the marsh of Chellenber by Baldarian forces. The Flaming Fist began operating in Baldur's Gate in the early 14th century Dale Reckoning. In the year of the Banner, 1368 DR, the Ballspawn Saravak orchestrated a major conspiracy to send the city to war with Am. The plan failed, and within 2 years, all Ballspawn were killed due to the actions of the future Grand Duke, Abadel Adaran. Later that year, the city was nearly overwhelmed by the scores of refugees that were displaced from their homes by the conflict surrounding the Shining Lady and her crusade. The Flaming Fist joined with nearby armies to form a coalition that met the rising threat at Dragonspear Castle. A group known as Xantum's Guild moved into Baldur's Gate early in the Year of Lightning Storms, 1374 Dale Reckoning. 3 adventurers, Vaughn, Cromlech, and Adriana, arrived and thwarted the Guild's plans in the city. Joined by the Harpers, they discovered the Thieves' Guild to be only a part of a larger plot involving Eldrith the Betrayer and her Dark Alliance. Eldrith's disciple, a vampire known as Mordock, sought to destroy the city in the years that followed. In the end, however, Mordock too was defeated, and the city was saved in the Year of the Bent Blade, 1376 Dale Reckoning. In the following decade, Faerun suffered the Spell Plague, a cataclysmic event that reshaped both civilizations and the land itself. Fortunately, Baldur's Gate was unharmed from the effects of the blue fire that rained from the sky. As it was known throughout Faerun as an open city, the gate became a haven for a great number of refugees that fled the destruction that racked the lands around the Sea of Fallen Stars. Within a matter of years, the population of the city tripled. Mercifully, the city was able to support itself following these years of intense growth and expansion. By the Year of the Ageless One, 1479 Dale Reckoning, Baldur's Gate was Faerun's most powerful and important city, and it was once again stable. At this time, it was no longer bothered by Valarkin and Am. It maintained a positive reputation with the nation of Eltergard and the other powers of the Western Heartlands. However, the expansion proved to turn the city on its heels, threatening to send it into civil war. While making a public speech on Returning Day in the year of the Narthex murders, 1482 Dale Reckoning, Grand Duke Abadel Adaran was attacked by a man named Vikang, the only other remaining Ballspawn. Although it was unknown who emerged as the victor, it was known that both men died at the hands of his mortal sibling, the other after having transformed into the Slayer, an avatar of the long-dead god Baal. The remaining Council of Four blamed the Grand Duke's death on agents of the Guild, the city's most prevalent thieves group, and established a group of adventurers to help investigate the tragedy. Shortly after, the city experienced a sudden spike of criminal activity, including robberies and vandalism, which caused the Flaming Fist to crack down on some shadier establishments in the lower city and outer city regions. As the Baldarian Parliament responded by passing bewildering sumptuary laws, stating that citizens had to wear attire befitting their station, vandals removed the hands of 5 beloved statues that decorated the city. Despite the best efforts by the adventurers, the Watch and the Flaming Fist, whose leadership was assumed by Alder Ravengard, the city erupted into chaos. As city workers went on strike and the upper city was placed on a lockdown curfew at mid-afternoon, the merchant class of the lower city became incensed and unruly. The outer city residents protested against the city's officials. Petty vandalism escalated to arson and even kidnappings. In response, the free press of the city, known as Baldur's Mouth, was shut down, and the new leaders of the Fist instituted a series of illegal tribunals. After a group of outer city residents clashed with a contingent of Flaming Fist soldiers in the district of Nordchapel, riots erupted throughout the lower and outer city regions. After an explosion erupted in Bloomridge, the city was placed under martial law. The adventurers hired by the council discovered the chaos in the city was a result of the Grand Duke Torlin Silvershield's plot to destroy the corrupted Baldarian Parliament. In a dramatic immolation of stockpile smoke powder and sever the guild's subversive influence over Baldarian officials, He revealed himself as the chosen, the reascended god of murder, Bal, before he was slain by the adventurers of Baldur's Gate. It is now 1492 Dale Reckoning, and a new enemy has arrived on the Sword Coast. As a nautiloid ship of mind flayers swoops into the city proper, hounded by Red Dragon riding Githyanki, the mind flayer ship scoops up soldier and commoner alike before escaping to Avernus. As the demon war rages below, you find yourself prisoner on this very ship, an elithid larva throbbing in your skull. What fate will you bring to Baldur's Gate? Will you be its next hero, or rise to become a new threat?